So I come to tell you He's alive, to tell you that He dries every tear that falls.
Hello, this is Clint Louie. I'm coming to you today with 5 minutes from friendship, and I appreciate you taking 5 minutes to tune in to these broadcasts each day. God bless you for it. So the other day, my wife and I go to the grocery store. Now, my precious wife, when she says that she needs to go pick up a few things at the grocery store, that is code for we need to go pick up a few things from the grocery store. You, big boy, are going with me. And so here we go. So we go to the store and we get our shopping done, and we're there at the checkout line waiting our turn, and as we're putting our things up on the conveyor belt and the cashier is helping us, and she strikes up a conversation. She looks over there at me, and the cashier says to me out of nowhere, she says, "Where do you preach at?" I thought, well, how did she know? And so it kind of floored me, honestly. And I'm standing there, honestly. Now, I'm standing there. I'm not wearing a three-piece suit. I'm not wearing a coat and tie. I'm standing there in a pair of blue jeans and an Alabama t-shirt. And I thought, well, how does she know that I'm a preacher? And so I asked her, and I said to her, I said, well, ma'am, I pastor the Friendship Baptist Church in Stanfield, North Carolina. I said, if you don't mind me asking, how did you know? She said, well, I've seen you. She said, when you've been out and the churches around the area, in our area, we have an outdoor meeting once a year at a barn in a public area. We call it the old barn meeting. And churches come together, have a great time preaching, singing, and worshiping. She says, when you've been out at the barn, I've been there and I've seen you. Well, we talked for a little while. Very pleasant lady and very nice to speak with. And we talked for a little while. And then we left. And we left there. My wife and I were talking about it. And we said, that reminds us. That reminds us that no matter where you go and what you're doing, somebody's watching you. Somebody knows you. Somebody sees you. And how important it is for us to keep a good testimony before God, to set a good example for others. Because whether you and I realize it or not, no matter what's going on, somebody is watching us. Somebody's watching us. The Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter 4 and verse 12, let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Here's one of God's lists. He gives 6 areas in which we are to set an example. 6 areas for us to be an example. Because somebody's watching us now. And so we need to set an example and be an example. He said, first of all, in word. That's what we say, how we speak. That's not just how we speak, but our tones and what we say and what we, what kind of conversations we have with our lips, with our mouths. And we ought to be careful to set the right example. And I don't believe Christians ought to use profanity, and I believe we ought not to use crude language and telling the off-color, dirty jokes. We ought to set an example. And then he says, set an example in conversation. That word conversation means our manner of life. It means how we live, how we function, everything from getting up in the morning to how we speak to our families, to how we handle people on the job. Our manner of life. Set a good example as you go about your day. And then he says, be an example also in charity, in love one for another. You set the bar high in loving people. And then he says, be an example in spirit. How is our spirit? How's our enthusiasm? Are we enthusiastic about the things of God? Hey, set that example in spirit. And then he says, set an example in faith, because people are watching you and they want to see your faith on display. Set an example in faith. Have faith in God. When times are tough, have faith in God. When times are good, have faith in God. And then set an example, he said, in purity. Let there not be a single solitary blemish or blot on your record, but set an example in purity. Because remember, somebody's watching us. Hey, this is Clint Louie encouraging you to set an example today. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.